Managing school and a busy schedule with lots of appointments can feel overwhelming. But today, I'm going to share tips to make your homeschool schedule work for you without the stress.
Raising neurodivergent kids is messy, beautiful, and a lot. I'm Mary Ellen Yates, and this is Growing Together, Neurodiversity at Home. Let's figure it out together.
Okay, let's get started. So in the last year, my two oldest sons have started going to a lot of regularly scheduled appointments. Between the two of them, it's about 15 hours a week. So if you've seen my other video about more open and go scheduling, I wasn't quite able to do that anymore. I had to make sure that I was still getting enough school in between the chunks of time that we were gone for appointments. So I'm going to show you how to do this if you also are in this situation where your kids are in a lot of appointments, but you also are supposed to be homeschooling them. It can be a lot. It's already a lot. I can tell you between homeschooling and their appointments, it's almost 40 hours a week. So it's almost a full-time job just doing these two things. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to block out the time it takes for you to commute to those appointments and the time for the actual appointments. You're going to chunk out that time when you're not available. Then you're going to find the chunks of time in between that and schedule those times for school. And so I'm going to share my screen to show you what this looked like for my family when I first started. As you can see, we have a 5-day week schedule. I know a lot of homeschoolers like to do 4, but it's just not possible for us with all the scheduled appointments. Most of our appointments are in the morning, and then we have afternoon in-home therapy. So we don't have to drive for this, and it's just in the home. Our morning therapies are on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We have to have lunch at some time, and then we have in-home therapy 4 days a week in the afternoons, so we're not commuting during this time, which helps our schedule a lot. Then this afternoon chunk of time, we're going to do things that are on the lighter side for cognitive load, because as you can see, they'll have had a full day of therapies and school, so it'll be on the lighter side here, but we'll still get in some things here that we can. So as you can see, on a Monday, I don't have morning appointments unless we have to schedule something else. So we're able to chunk in a lot of school on this day until we have lunch and therapies. On Tuesdays, I have to be a little more creative because they start appointments at 8:30 and they end at 10:30, but each of them have an hour appointment. So during that hour, we're just sitting in the car. So with the kid that is not in the appointment, I am doing school with them. So I get an hour here where I can do school with each of them. And then when we get home, I'll have an hour before we need to do lunch and therapy to also get in some school after we get back. And then we have the afternoon. On Wednesdays, we don't have to leave until 9:15. For us, school has to start at 8 to be able to get in enough school time. And so from 8 to 9:15, I can usually do a chunk of time. And then during that time, only one of my kids is in therapy. So the other kid, I have an hour with just him. And then it alternates. On the next day, on Thursdays, my other kid has an hour where he has therapy. So the other one, I have an hour where I do school with him. And usually in the morning, I focus on the other kid that's in therapy so that they're getting in their hour also. And then you can see how it goes from there. On Fridays, it's mostly going to be language arts and math, and then catching up on whatever we didn't get finished during the week. We'll be probably catching up on that on Fridays. And then hopefully in the afternoons, we'll be able to go on play dates or do field trips or do other enriching items or do history movies or whatever. We will have chunks of time for 30 minutes on most days that we can also do lunch videos, which would also count as school time. So let me show you what the math would look like for this. In the state of Georgia, where we live, 4.5 hours a day is required for homeschool. For a 5-day per week school schedule, that would be 22.5 hours a week. Our sit-down, school availability, and lunch videos gives us 21.5 hours a week. So there's only 1 hour that we would not need at that point. And then for history, I use audio so that we can do it in the car. So driving time is about an hour and 45 minutes for us every week. And so I have that time for us to listen to our history text and also history audiobooks. So that leaves 45 minutes of extra time. And that doesn't include the therapies. A lot of that stuff overlaps with academics, and also the reading time in the evenings that we try to get when we can, and other opportunities that come up. So we're definitely getting well over the 4.5 hours a day of school. So with knowing that, it can give you a little bit of peace of mind and to know that you have enough time to get it done. So you're going to want to prioritize your math and language arts. Have a time when you know you're going to be able to do those that are going to be at work for your kids. For my kiddos, it's usually first thing in the morning. And then you're going to try to get in your other subjects where you can that the state requires. A lot of homeschoolers go beyond what the state requires. But if you have kids and tons of therapy, you might not be able to do that. And it's okay to have a season where you're just doing what is required, and that's okay. And then you can just do the open and go method, which I shared in another video, where you're just opening up your curriculum. You do it for the time you have, and then you move on to the next one. And then when you're done with that curriculum in the year, you're done with it. And you put it aside and you're done with history or science or whatever for the year. And then just keep the language arts and math going throughout the year. And it really can be that easy. And then another thing to keep in mind, if you have a day that is super appointment heavy, you're probably going to want lighter subjects and to just realize you're not going to get as much done there. So if you remember, on my Wednesdays, we're pretty busy. One of my sons has an hour appointment, and then we drive to another appointment that's 30 minutes, and then we get home, and then they have 2.5 hours of in-home therapy. So it's a lot that day. So that hour and 15 minutes that I get in the morning, that's basically what we're going to get in the day. And then maybe that hour slot after the therapists leave our home in the afternoon, we might get something done, but it's going to be very light because that is a busy day. Those therapies are therapies that are working them that they have a hard time in. So they're trying to build up skills. And so they're going to be using a lot of cognitive load for those therapies. So it's going to be very light on those days. But then on my Mondays and my Fridays, I have chunks of time where I can get more done because we don't have therapies on that day. So those days are just going to be heavier, and that's what it's going to be. So remember, the goal is going to be flexibility for everyone to thrive and to keep their sanity and their peace. And I already give you permission that if you need a day off, you need a day off, because sometimes that's just what it takes. And we do school all year round to some extent. In the summer, it's mostly just language arts and math. So we're still getting even more time than the 180 days that's required to give myself peace, but also to keep up their skills. And so it's okay to take a day off if you need a day off. Your kids are going to be learning so much from you. It's about flexibility, not perfection. And with a little bit of planning and just having an idea of what you need to chunk in where, you can totally still do the open and go method around all of your appointments. Do you have a lot of appointments? How do you manage it? Subscribe below for more tips on homeschooling and how to simplify your day. And I'll see you later. Bye.